All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about a pretty wild story, how an obsolete piece of technology became a devastating modern weapon. So picture this. It's September 17th, 2024. You've got nearly 3,000 pagers. And these aren't just any pagers. They're being carried by Hezbollah commanders and operatives all across Lebanon. And they all exploded at the exact same time. Now, this coordinated blast didn't just create chaos. It instantly crippled their command structure. But the real story here isn't just what happened. It's how this seemingly impossible attack was pulled off. Okay, first up, a coordinated explosion. Let's start by looking at the immediate aftermath, the human cost of this unprecedented event.
Yeah, the source describes an absolutely horrific scene. We're talking about thousands of people with devastating, life-altering injuries, lost limbs, lost eyesight. This effectively paralyzed a huge number of Hezbollah's people. And the hospitals, they were just completely overwhelmed.
All right, Section 2. Why use obsolete pagers? This is probably what you're thinking, right? In an age of smartphones, why on earth were they using pagers that look like they're straight out of the 90s?
So here's the thing, and this is absolutely crucial. Hezbollah switched to pagers for one very specific reason: to avoid being tracked. Israeli drone strikes had been successfully taking out their commanders by zeroing in on their mobile phones. So for Hezbollah, the fact that this old tech was untraceable, that wasn't a bug. It was its greatest feature. It was supposed to be secure.
So that brings us to our third section, the supply chain trap. Because that shift to pagers, it created this really unique opportunity. And according to the source, it was an opportunity Israeli intelligence was more than ready to exploit.
And this right here, this slide, shows you exactly how the plan worked. It's kind of genius in its simplicity. Instead of some super complex digital hack, the whole strategy was to go after the physical supply chain. See, by tampering with the devices while they were being made, all the way over in Hungary, Israeli intelligence could literally plant a hidden weapon inside each pager long before it ever reached its final destination.
And get this, the whole thing was almost blown. The source says a Hezbollah member actually got suspicious of the new pagers. But here's the twist. He reported his concerns to his commander, who just so happened to be a secret Israeli agent, a double agent. So that agent didn't just silence the leak, he actually told Israel, hey, you need to speed this up, before the whole plot was discovered. Unbelievable.
Okay, Section 4. So, the big question, how the pager became a bomb. Let's break down the tech.
The secret ingredient was this stuff, PETN. It's a really potent plastic explosive. And they only needed a tiny amount, just about 30 grams. Small enough to fit right inside the pager's casing, right next to the battery, without anyone noticing a thing.
So let's look at the timeline. The compromised pagers land in Lebanon back in February and get handed out. Then in July, you have that internal leak that gets shut down, which forces Israel to move up its plans. And that brings us to September 17th, at exactly 3:30 p.m. Why that time? Well, that's when Hezbollah usually sent out its daily communications, the perfect moment to trigger all 3,000 pagers at once for maximum damage.
So how did it actually work? Well, the detonation was this viciously simple two-step process. First, a remote signal was broadcast. That signal activated a hidden piece of software that had been pre-installed on the pager. And here's the brutal part. That software forced the device's own battery to rapidly overheat. The battery itself became the detonator for that hidden explosive charge. The whole thing was designed to cause maximum injury, whether the pager was tucked in a pocket or held right up to the user's face.
All right, let's move on to the fifth and final section, fallout and a modern warning. Because the story doesn't end there, and there's a pretty big warning here for all of us.
Yeah, this attack didn't just stop with the pagers. The source claims it was actually part of a much broader campaign, almost like psychological warfare. Because soon after, there were reports of walkie-talkies exploding. Hezbollah even started issuing these internal warnings that other consumer electronics, we're talking everything from AC units to solar panels, could be compromised too. Imagine that. It shows just how deeply this supply chain attack sowed fear and paranoia.
And that really brings us to a critical question, one that affects all of us. Could your electronics, the ones you're using right now, be a security risk?
This quote from the source, man, it really gets to the heart of the modern warning here. We are not digital makers, we are simply digital users. Think about that. Our dependency on foreign technology creates this massive vulnerability. And not just for paramilitary groups, but for, well, everyone. The phones, the laptops, the smart devices we all use every single day, they're built on these incredibly complex global supply chains that are just impossible to fully secure. When you don't control the manufacturing, you can never be 100% certain of what's inside.
And so, this leaves us with one last, kind of chilling thought. This attack turned a simple communication device into a weapon, not through a hack, but through a compromised supply chain. So the question we have to ask ourselves now is no longer if an everyday object can be weaponized, but what everyday object is next.